everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating piece of text. We're looking at a performance transcript from the comedy troupe Kvartal 95, and we're going to unpack this absolutely wild linguistic metaphor they use. We're keeping things strictly analytical, neutral, and focused entirely on the language. It's literally a masterclass in how you can build an extended metaphor, word by word, to totally flip the atmosphere of a room.
Okay, let's dive right into this, because the text does not mess around. It hits us with this incredibly striking, honestly shocking hook. I love shooting the city. I mean, if you isolate that line, it sounds so aggressive, right? Out of context, it implies violence, destruction, chaos. But, as analysts, we know text never exists in a vacuum. The performers are purposely using this aggressive language to grab you by the collar right before they pull the rug out and give you the real comedic context. And boom, here's where the whole metaphor drops. We take that literal, aggressive phrase, shooting the city, and put it right next to the reality, shooting point blank with a joke. Suddenly, the violence is totally recontextualized. They aren't holding literal weapons, they are weaponizing their words. This is a stand-up routine, and the city they're shooting at, that's just the audience in the theater. They're basically building a world where punchlines are literal projectiles.
Which brings us to Section 1, the metaphor of war.
The lyrical setup here is just brilliant. Listen to this. They saw us off here like to a war, Mom laughed to tears. The song immediately sets up this super intense, high-stakes military vibe, fundamentally shifting how we perceive a normal comedy show. They're playfully treating their walk onto the stage as if they're deploying to the front lines. But look at that subversion. Normally, a mom saying goodbye to a soldier would be crying in sorrow, right? Here, Mom laughed to tears. It's this perfect, beautiful contradiction that reminds us, hey, the words are military, but the output is pure comedy. And this brilliantly illustrates just how deep they go with this metaphor. The text mentions covering an embrasure with their body. Now, in military history, throwing your body over a bunker's firing ports, an embrasure, is the ultimate act of heroic sacrifice to save your squad. By saying they're going to cover the embrasure just to deliver a joke, it's an absurd, almost theatrical level of dedication. They take this trope of supreme wartime heroism and apply it to, well, trying to make an audience giggle.
Moving right along to Section 2, weaponizing the humor.
So now that the battlefield is set, the text shows us how the actual act of comedy is aggressively weaponized. If we laugh to death. We continue the battle. Just look at the stakes there. As objective observers, it's so interesting to watch how this battle is entirely fueled by humor. We've all used the hyperbole, oh man, I died laughing. But by slapping it right next to we continue the battle, they revitalize that dead cliché. Suddenly, laughing to death sounds like a genuine combat directive. The show must go on, and this battle of jokes absolutely has to be won. What's really fascinating here is this stark linguistic contrast happening with the vocabulary. It's a total collision of two different worlds. On one side, you have intense military combat words like battle and shoot. But on the flip side, right in the middle of all this aggressive posturing, they confess what they're actually doing, inventing humor and making faces at the audience. It is hilariously disarming. They are literally using the language of a general ordering an artillery strike to describe the act of sticking their tongues out.
This leads us to Section 3, casualties in the audience.
Because look, in any extended war metaphor, you've got to have collateral damage, right? The text playfully hands out these casualties to real people in the venue. So the crucial point is that they don't leave the battle as some vague concept. They point out specific victims of their aggressive comedy. We get this highly visual list of collateral damage. Let's see how the text dispatches these folks one by one.
First up, there's some poor guy who dozed off up on the balcony. The text says someone from the backing vocals hits him with a control gag. Now, this is such a clever linguistic trick. It's playing on the military concept of a control shot. That definitive, final shot to make absolutely sure a target is neutralized. By swapping shot for gag, they're playfully punishing the sleepy guy. It's a warning. In this theater of war, nobody sleeps on duty without taking a sharp punchline to the ears.
But hey, the paying audience aren't the only ones in the crosshairs. The crew isn't safe either. The text cheerfully drops that the sound engineer has literally suffocated from laughter. The implication here is that their comedic assault is just so unrelenting, so potent, that even the hardened pros behind the scenes, the guys who have probably heard these jokes 50 times in rehearsal, are dropping like flies.
Then the whole thing reaches a boiling point. The lyrics go, they spotted us, the operator zoomed in, that's it, I'm finishing off the hall. This is a massive escalation in the narrative. They're treating the camera operator like an enemy sniper or a reconnaissance drone. The second they're spotted in the viewfinder, the performer goes all out to literally finish off the room with their ultimate jokes. The energy right here is frantic and honestly totally triumphant. All right, on to our final part, Section 4, the final geopolitical punchline. Right when you think this metaphor has reached its natural, localized conclusion inside the four walls of the theater, the scale suddenly and dramatically shifts. Let's move to the structural escalation we've mapped out so we can really see how this builds. Step 1, deploying to the theater like a war. Step 2, firing those point-blank jokes at the crowd and crew. Step 3, lowering the humor level to its absolute limit. And that sets us up for Step 4, an unexpected, final regional address that completely changes the scope of the whole performance. To set up that big finale, the performers openly admit to their relentless assault. The text says, humor level down to the limit, even if the viewer is tired. They're basically admitting, hey, we're at a highbrow ammo, so they're resorting to the most basic, instinctual comedy to win the fight. They are purposely pushing the routine to its absolute breaking point, whether the audience is exhausted or not, just clearing the runway for their closing statement.
And here is how it all concludes. We love making Ukraine laugh. Good evening, Moscow. As analysts reading this transcript, this is just such a fascinating, jarring juxtaposition. For the entire performance, we've been sitting in this highly localized theater metaphor, shooting the audience, waking up the guy in the balcony, messing with the sound guy. But in its very last breath, the text completely zooms out. It drops the theater walls and explicitly names two distinct, massive geopolitical entities. It's a wild, rapid expansion of scale, turning a localized comedy battle into an address that shoots right across borders.
Which leaves us with this final, really vital question to ponder. How do aggressive theatrical metaphors shape our interpretation of a comedic performance? When artists take the language of battle, of casualties, and geopolitics and use it to describe the simple act of making people laugh, it totally transforms our listening experience, doesn't it? It adds these incredible layers of tension and high-stakes energy to what is essentially just a few people on a stage making faces. I highly encourage you to keep this in mind the next time you watch a show. Pay attention to those underlying metaphors. You will be amazed at what you catch. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing and stay curious.